Look, let's start with a phrase that gets thrown around a lot, especially on the 4th of July by your uncle right before he lights an illegal firework. All men are created equal. Now, beyond its historical baggage and glaring omissions, the core idea here is actually pretty revolutionary. It suggests that, at a fundamental level, no person is born with a saddle on their back, and no other person is born with spurs, ready to ride them. You are inherently sovereign. You are the king or queen of your own little kingdom of one. This isn't just some feel-good platitude to stitch on a pillow, it's the very foundation of personal freedom. It means you are not inherently anyone's subordinate. This principle of equality is the philosophical bedrock upon which everything else is built. It means that your life, your choices, and your property are yours to control. No one, and I mean no one, not your neighbor, not your boss, not even someone in a fancy uniform with a very serious-looking hat, has a natural, God-given right to tell you what to do. They can't just march into your life and start issuing decrees. Your autonomy is your birthright. The moment you accept that you are equal to every other person on this planet, you realize that your consent is the most valuable currency you possess. It's the invisible fence that protects your liberty from being trampled. Think about it this way, your personal freedom is not a gift granted to you by a government or a constitution. It's an intrinsic state of being. The documents and the laws are supposed to be the guardrails that protect that freedom, not the source from which it flows. You are not a subject waiting for permission to act. You are an individual, endowed with the right to make your own decisions. That's a powerful and, frankly, slightly terrifying thought. It means you are in the driver's seat, which is great, but it also means you are responsible for steering. Understanding this is the first crucial step toward navigating a world full of people and systems that would very much like to take the wheel. So when we talk about consent, we aren't just talking about what happens in the bedroom, we are talking about the fundamental mechanism of all human interaction in a free society. It's the yes or no that governs everything from signing a contract to paying a fine. It's the active, conscious decision to engage, to comply, or to delegate authority. Without your consent, any attempt to control you is, in essence, a violation of that core principle of equality. You're not a doormat, you're not a cog in someone else's machine. You are a sovereign entity, and your consent is the key to your kingdom. Alright, now that we've established you're the ruler of your own personal Monaco, let's talk about the things that look, sound, and feel like commands. You know what I'm talking about, official-looking letters with bold, capital letters demanding you do something, a summons to appear in court, or even a police officer telling you to pull over. These things feel like non-negotiable orders direct from the universe's management. But here's the twist, and it's a big one. In a system predicated on the idea that all men are created equal, no one can truly order you to do anything. Instead, what you are receiving is an offer. That's right, an offer. Think of it like a very aggressive pop-up ad. A demand for payment is an offer for you to settle a claim. A summons is an offer for you to voluntarily appear and submit to a court's jurisdiction. A ticket is an offer to enter into a contract where you agree you've done something wrong and will pay the corresponding penalty. These are all applications for your consent. They are dressed up in the intimidating costume of authority, but underneath it all, they are simply requests. They are asking for your permission to exercise power over you, and they are really hoping you'll just say yes without thinking too much about it. This reframing is absolutely critical. An order implies you have no choice, that you are a subordinate who must comply. An offer, on the other hand, restores your power. An offer can be accepted, it can be rejected, or, and this is the fun part, it can be conditionally accepted. You are no longer a passive recipient of a command. You are an active participant in a negotiation. This simple shift in perspective moves you from a position of weakness to a position of power. It recognizes that any authority a government or legal body has over you is authority you must first grant them. They need your signature on the dotted line, either literally or metaphorically. Of course, this is not to say you should start ignoring police officers or tearing up court summonses with a theatrical flair. That would be, to put it mildly, a spectacularly bad idea. The consequences of outright rejection can be severe, but understanding the underlying mechanic is key. It's about knowing the nature of the game you are playing. The system is designed to look like a one-way street of commands, but it is, in fact, a complex network of offers and acceptances. Recognizing this is the first step toward learning how to navigate that network without accidentally signing away your kingdom for a metaphorical bag of magic beans. So if these institutions need your consent to have power over you, how do they get it? Do they ask nicely? "Excuse me, sir or madam, would you be so kind as to grant us jurisdiction over your entire existence? Please?" No, of course not, that would be too honest. Instead, they use a far more subtle and effective method: paperwork. Specifically, they use things like applications, registrations, and submissions. These are the primary tools for securing what can only be described as unwitted consent, getting you to agree to things without you fully realizing the scope of what you're agreeing to. Think about every form you've ever filled out. Applying for a driver's license? You're not just asking for a pretty piece of plastic with a terrible photo on it. You are agreeing to abide by a massive, complex vehicle code and submitting to the jurisdiction of the traffic courts. Registering to vote? You are identifying yourself as a participant in a specific political system subject to its rules. Signing up for a bank account? You are consenting to a whole host of regulations and reporting requirements. Each of these actions is a voluntary submission where you hand over a little piece of your autonomy in exchange for a privilege. You are willingly stepping into their world and agreeing to play by their rules. This is the consent trap in action. It's brilliant in its simplicity. By packaging the surrender of authority as a routine, necessary, or even beneficial act, the system obtains the consent it needs to function. You wanted the convenience of driving, so you signed on the dotted line. The problem is not the act of signing itself, it's the lack of full disclosure about what you're consenting to. It's buried in pages of fine print that no sane person has ever read, creating a binding agreement where one party, you, isn't fully aware of all the terms. You've unwittingly given them power over you, and that power can be used in ways you never anticipated. This is why it's called unwitted consent. You technically agreed, but you didn't have the full picture. It's like agreeing to house sit for a friend and only later discovering the house is a petting zoo for angry honey badgers. You consented, sure, but not to that. The system relies on this. It relies on you focusing on the benefit, the license, the loan, the right to vote, while glossing over the authority you are permanently ceding in the process. Recognizing this pattern is the first step to avoiding the trap. You have to start looking at every form not as a simple request for information, but as a proposed contract that needs careful review. Okay, so you get an official-looking letter in the mail. Maybe it's a court summons, a notice from the IRS, or a particularly aggressive letter from your homeowners association about the unacceptable shade of beige you painted your fence. Your first instinct might be to do what we all do with unpleasant things: ignore it. You might think, if I don't acknowledge it, it can't affect me. I don't consent, so there. This is, unfortunately, a one-way ticket to illegal spanking. In the world of law and commerce, silence is not golden. In fact, it's often interpreted as concession. This act of ignoring an official offer or notice has a specific and rather dramatic name: dishonor. When you dishonor a presentment, you are essentially forfeiting the game. You are refusing to play your move. And in most games, if you refuse to move, you lose. The legal system, particularly in civil matters, is often set up like a commercial enterprise. It's not always about finding the absolute truth of a situation, it's about resolving a dispute and settling a liability. And if one party makes a claim, an offer, and the other party remains silent, dishonors it, the judge's job becomes very simple. They are not there to argue on your behalf. A judge's role is to adjudicate disputes. If you fail to show up or respond, there is no dispute to adjudicate. One party has made a claim, and the other has, through their silence, failed to rebut it. So, the judge will often rule in favor of the party that actually showed up and made their case. The primary question becomes, who will pay? Because your failure to respond is seen as an admission of liability. You had your chance to state your case, to reject the offer, or to negotiate, and you chose to do nothing. The system, therefore, moves on without you and usually at your expense. This is a critical point to understand. Your non-response is an action, and it has consequences. You might think you are withholding consent by being silent, but the system is designed to interpret that silence as dishonor, which leads to a default judgment against you. You haven't protected your freedom, you've accidentally surrendered it. You've allowed the other party to win without even putting up a fight, so the answer is never to ignore an official notice. The answer is to engage, but to engage smartly, on your own terms, and without giving up your power. Ignoring the knock at the door doesn't make the person go away, it just gives them permission to kick it down. So, if accepting an offer gives away your power and ignoring it, dishonor, is a guaranteed loss, what's left? Are you trapped? No. This brings us to the third and most powerful option: conditional acceptance. This is the strategic judo move that allows you to engage with an offer without surrendering to it. It is the master key that keeps the power in your hands. Instead of a simple yes or no, your answer becomes, yes, I will accept your offer if you meet my reasonable conditions. This is not a rejection, it is a counteroffer. Let's break this down. A court or an agency's primary function is to resolve disputes. When you receive a demand or a summons, that is the beginning of a potential dispute. If you reject it outright, you create a conflict, I will not versus oh yes you will, which the court is then empowered to settle. But with a conditional acceptance, you cleverly avoid creating a dispute in the first place. You are not arguing, you are agreeing, but with terms. You are saying, I would be happy to do what you ask, I just need a little clarification first. This puts the ball back in their court. What kind of conditions are we talking about? They should be reasonable requests for verification and clarification. For example, I accept your offer to pay this fine upon proof of claim that I am contractually obligated to you, or I will accept your offer to appear in court upon verification of your jurisdiction over me, a living man, or I will happily pay this bill upon receipt of a true bill from a living human being with their wet ink signature, who can be held liable for its accuracy. You are not being difficult, you are simply doing your due diligence, you are asking them to prove their claim has merit before you comply. This strategy is powerful because it keeps you in a position of honor. You have not ignored their presentment, you have responded, and you have responded agreeably. You have simply asked for the evidence to back up their offer. More often than not, the bureaucratic systems that send out these automated demands are not equipped to handle such a response. They are set up for a simple yes, payment, or no, default judgment. A request for proof from a specific, liable human being can grind the gears of the administrative machine to a halt. You haven't created a dispute, so you've potentially avoided their jurisdiction entirely. You've used their own rules to your advantage. Let's make this concrete. Imagine you find a parking ticket tucked under your windshield wiper. That little piece of paper feels like a bill, a final judgment from the god of asphalt. But it's not. It is an offer. It is an offer from a corporation, the city or municipality, for you to enter into a contract, agreeing that you violated a rule and owe them money. Your first instinct is to either pay it to make it go away, which is acceptance, or throw it in the glove box to be forgotten, which is dishonor. But now we know there's a third way: conditional acceptance. Instead of paying or ignoring it, you respond. You don't argue about whether you were parked illegally, you don't make excuses, you write a polite professional letter. In it you state, I have received your notice, number 12345. I am happy to settle this matter and accept your offer for payment upon receipt of a valid bill, and here come your conditions. You might ask for 1. A true bill, with a wet ink signature from the human being making the claim, who can be held commercially liable for its contents. 2. A copy of the contract that I signed, binding me to your statutes. 3. Proof of claim that the notice you sent is a lawful bill and not simply an offer. What have you done here? You have not argued, you have not refused. You have honored their presentment by responding. You have simply asked for the documentation that any legitimate business would be able to provide if they were sending a real bill. You are treating the municipality like any other corporation and asking them to show you the paperwork. You are requesting proof of the contract. Since a parking ticket is an offer, not a bill, they likely cannot provide you with a true bill signed by a liable party, nor can they produce a contract with your signature on it. This action discharges your duty to respond further until they meet your conditions. You have avoided both outright consent and dishonor. You have effectively returned the serve, but with a spin on it they weren't expecting. This approach requires diligence, proper formatting, and sending your response via registered mail to have proof of delivery. It's not a magic wand and its effectiveness can vary, but it illustrates the principle perfectly. By understanding the nature of the offer and using conditional acceptance, you can challenge the presumed authority of the issuer and force them to justify their claim, fundamentally shifting the balance of power. Now, you might be thinking, this all sounds great in theory, but is there any actual legal basis for this, or is this just some clever wordplay? It's a fair question, and the answer is yes. This entire framework is supported by some of the oldest and most powerful legal principles in the nation. The ultimate shield, of course, is the Bill of Rights. These aren't just suggestions, they are restrictions on the government's power. They create a space for individual liberty that the government is forbidden to enter. They are, in essence, a pre-written list of conditions the people have placed on the government. Consider the Fifth Amendment. It guarantees that no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. This is huge. Due process isn't just a vague procedural hurdle. It's a requirement that the system follows fair and established rules. When you conditionally accept an offer and ask for proof of claim, you are essentially demanding your right to due process. You are asking the other party to follow the rules of commerce and law by substantiating their claim against your property, your money. You are refusing to be deprived of it without that process being honored. Then there's the power of the grand jury, which is referenced in the Fifth Amendment as well. This is a mechanism designed to be a shield between the people and the government. The idea is that the government cannot just file criminal charges against someone out of malice or for political reasons. It must first present its evidence to a jury of ordinary citizens, the grand jury, and get their permission to proceed. This is a profound check on state power. It forces the government to seek consent from the people before it can even formally accuse someone of a serious crime, preventing what the founders feared as unrighteous prosecution. These constitutional protections are the ultimate expression of conditional acceptance on a national scale. The people, via the Constitution, have said to the government, "Yes, we consent to you governing, but only under these specific conditions." These rights are not privileges the government grants you. They are limitations you have placed on the government. Understanding these rights gives you the legal and moral authority to stand your ground. You are not making things up. You are invoking the highest law of the land to protect your fundamental creator-endowed freedom. Beyond the broad protections of the Constitution, the principles of consent and individual choice are also echoed in foundational case law. These aren't new ideas, they are as old as the Republic itself. Judges and legal scholars have been grappling with the line between government authority and personal liberty for centuries. One of the most telling, albeit old cases, is Cruden v. Neal, from way back in 1796. The court's opinion in that case noted that an individual has the right to decide for themselves whether or not they wish to participate in institutions, even governmental ones. This reinforces the idea that participation requires your consent. You cannot be forced into an agreement or compelled to join something against your will. This precedent supports the entire notion that things like registrations and applications are voluntary acts of consent. You have the right to choose. Now obviously, choosing not to participate in modern society comes with a whole host of practical problems. Try living without a bank account or a driver's license. But the underlying principle remains, your participation is, at its core, a choice. It is not a mandatory duty you are born with. This legal precedent affirms that your sovereignty is real and has been recognized by the courts. Then we have the big one, the case every first-year law student learns, Marbury v. Madison. This is the landmark 1803 Supreme Court case that established the principle of judicial review. What does that mean? It means the courts have the power to strike down laws, rules, and government actions that are repugnant to the Constitution. Anything that violates the supreme law of the land is, in the court's famous words, null and void. This is the ultimate enforcement mechanism for your rights. It establishes that the Constitution is not just a list of suggestions, it is a binding contract that the government must obey. This precedent is your ultimate trump card. If a statute, rule, or practice forces you to act in a way that violates your constitutionally protected rights, like depriving you of property without due process, then that rule is, legally speaking, illegitimate. Marbury v. Madison provides the legal foundation for challenging unjust authority. It confirms that the power of the government is limited, and that you have a legal basis to stand against any overreach. When you make a conditional acceptance based on your constitutional rights, you are standing on the solid ground of this monumental legal decision. So, let's bring it all home. We started with the simple, powerful idea that all people are created equal, meaning no one has the inherent right to command you. We've seen how this turns a world of orders into a world of offers, where your consent is the ultimate currency. We've unmasked the consent trap of everyday applications and registrations, which secure your unwitting agreement to systems of control. We've learned that ignoring these offers is not an act of defiance but an act of dishonor that leads to a default loss. and that the true path to power lies in the strategic use of conditional acceptance. This isn't just an abstract legal theory, it's a practical mindset for navigating the modern world. From a simple parking ticket to a complex legal notice, understanding the dynamics of consent allows you to shift from being a passive subject to an active, sovereign individual. By responding with yes, upon proof of claim, you retain your power, honor the process, and place the burden of proof back where it belongs, on the party making the demand. You force the system to justify itself according to its own rules, a task it is often unequipped to handle. You are not breaking the law, you are using the law's own logic to your advantage. The principles are reinforced by the highest laws and legal precedents of the nation. The Bill of Rights serves as a pre-negotiated set of conditions on government power, and landmark cases like Marbury v. Madison affirm that any rule repugnant to the Constitution is void. These are not loopholes, they are the intended mechanics of a system designed to protect individual liberty from encroachment. They are the tools given to the people to prevent the slow, creeping erosion of freedom by bureaucratic or authoritarian forces. Your right to choose, to question, and to demand justification is your most potent shield. Ultimately, mastering the language and practice of consent is about more than just winning a standoff over a ticket. It is about reclaiming your personal sovereignty. It is about understanding that freedom is not a passive state, but an active practice. It requires vigilance, knowledge, and the courage to question authority and demand that it justify itself. In a world that constantly asks for your compliance, learning to grant it conditionally is the most powerful way to protect your liberty, uphold your rights, and ensure that the foundational promise of equality remains a living reality, not just a historical phrase.